All right, back here on SportsLine. Phone lines open, 737-7767. If you want to get in on the conversation tonight, talking about championship football from over the weekend. Of course, we could talk about the Titans and the end of their season as well. A lot of people certainly thought that they might still be going right now. And off to L.A. for Super Bowl 56, where we all know that whoever won in the NFC yesterday would have been a team that the Titans beat earlier in the season, including the Rams in SoFi Stadium, where Super Bowl 56 is going to be played. And by the way, how bizarre is this fact? That through the first 54 Super Bowls played, there had never been a team to advance to the Super Bowl that was then played in their home stadium. You know, the Super Bowl is always a neutral site. It's bid out. It's not a home field advantage type of scenario. But through 54 years, it had never happened where a team would advance to a game where the neutral site just happened to be their home stadium, because obviously they use NFL stadiums all the time because they're the best stadiums in the country. It had never happened before. And then last year it happened. The Bucs won 3 games on the road in the playoffs to get to Super Bowl 55 and played Super Bowl 55 against the Chiefs at home in Tampa Bay. And of course, they dominated. They won the game. By the way, it was only 55, 60% capacity last year because of COVID rules. This year, the Super Bowl's in L.A., and the Rams do the same thing. They win 3 games, including 1 game away from home, and beating a 6 seed at home in the NFC Championship game. And now they get to play in SoFi Stadium, their home stadium, in Super Bowl 56 against the Bengals. This one will be full capacity. Under certain COVID restrictions out there at LA, you're going to see a lot of masks, I'm pretty sure, at the Super Bowl. But it's going to be full capacity. Again, neutral environment. There's going to be a lot of corporate seats. There's certainly going to be a lot of Bengals fans there. So it's not going to feel completely like a home game, but obviously you got to give the advantage to the Rams in that category because it's their own stadium. And their fans have a lot less far to travel. But I just think it's really remarkable that we went 54 years without it ever happening, and now it's happened in back-to-back seasons. Back to the phones we go. Let's say hello to James. James, good evening, and welcome to SportsLine.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on something. For all the football fans out there, boy, we had some heartbreaks and some exciting games. But I'll say this was the most fantastic playoff season I've ever witnessed. And I'm 62 years old and used to watch the Lions play with rabbit ears when I was a kid. So after what we went through last year, I think we ought to be thankful that we had such an exciting year this year and look forward to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's about it.
All right, James, thanks for the call. Let's just hope the Super Bowl lives up to it, right? Because these playoffs have been absolutely nothing short of fantastic from start to finish. Wild card weekend, super wild card weekend. Maybe the games weren't great, but obviously you've got a lot of football. It's playoff football there. We had a really good game between the 49ers and the Cowboys on Sunday afternoon as part of it. You had Ben Roethlisberger's final game. So you had some certain moments for sure there on the opening weekend. But then, divisional round weekend, I think was the best weekend of football ever played in the NFL. All 4 games came down to the end of regulation, and 1 went into overtime. I mean, the best way to describe divisional weekend in the NFL this year is this simple fact. There have been 10 games in the history of the NFL playoffs that have been decided on a field goal on the final play of the game as the gun goes off. 10 games all time. 3 of them happened this year in that one weekend in consecutive games. Bengals over the Titans, 49ers over the Packers, Rams over the Bucs, all on final second field goals. And none of those games were the best game of the weekend. The final game between the Chiefs and the Bills was absolutely berserk. There was another last play of regulation field goal by the Chiefs to force overtime. It didn't decide the game. And that came after 25 points in the final minute 54 of regulation. It was just back and forth. Nobody could get a stop. It was Mahomes, it was Allen. They were dueling, and they were both getting it done. And then you go to overtime. Coin toss goes to the Chiefs. Mahomes leads them down the field and hits Travis Kelce for the game-winning touchdown. But that weekend, to me, was as good as it possibly could get when you talk about postseason sports, and specifically the NFL. And then we all sat there last week and it was like, all right, well, those were incredible, but is there any way that this weekend can live up to what we just saw? Is there any chance that these games can be half as good as what we got last weekend? As we mentioned earlier, in the first half of the Bengals-Chiefs game, it felt like we were destined for a blowout there, or a game that wouldn't be competitive in the fourth quarter. And what happens? The Bengals matched the largest championship game comeback in NFL history. They come back from 18 points down. You have another last play of regulation kick to force overtime, once again by Harrison Butker of the Chiefs. And then this time the Bengals pull the upset and shock the world in OT to move on to the Super Bowl for the first time in a long time. The final game, maybe not quite as good, but it still came down to the final 2 minutes for the game-deciding score. The 49ers had a chance to either match it or beat it on their final possession that went into the final minute. It involved a 10-point comeback by the Rams, two division rivals. Phenomenal football all the way through. The games in this postseason have been simply phenomenal. And we can just hope, and fingers crossed, that Super Bowl 56 in 2 weeks in LA will be just as good. Because that's the only way, really, that you can put the cherry on top of this postseason, because it has been awesome. And you're right. After last year, with everything that we went through with COVID and half-empty stadiums and everything that we saw, to be back this year in full stadiums with excitement abounding and the way these games have played out has just been awesome. Even if you're a casual fan. I know several people who don't necessarily love the NFL or aren't maybe big football fans, and they were completely immersed in these games the last 2 weekends. It was hard not to be, because the excitement was just emanating through the television, or if you were lucky enough to be in one of the stadiums, the energy was palpable. And the tension with how these games played out, you could feel it. It was almost like it was pulling on you. That's how palpable it was throughout. These games were absolutely amazing. Reaction now to Championship Sunday in the NFL with our good buddy Jonathan Hutton from Outkick from last night on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central. Amazing to think that any game this weekend could live up to what we all watched last weekend, but we get another overtime game in Kansas City. The Bengals shock the world again, matching the largest championship game comeback ever. Jonathan, how did a team that had never won a playoff game on the road before beat the #1 and #2 seeds in the AFC in back-to-back weeks on the road?
It's been impressive, but the key was they stayed patient. They did not panic. 4 weeks ago, they were down 14 points to KC and came back to win by a field goal. And what was different today is how they went about pulling the comeback. In the first matchup, it was make it, take it. Jamar Chase had 260 yards receiving. Burrow had 450 yards passing. And today, they used a similar script for what helped them win last week here in Nashville. Mahomes threw it to their defense, and Cincy, in the biggest moments of the game, turned those takeaways into points. And now they're playing in the biggest game headed out to LA in 2 weeks.
And they'll meet the Rams, who rally from 10 down in the fourth quarter to end a 6-game losing streak against the 49ers. And I guess now that Matthew Stafford trade really pays off.
Except going back to the trade, January 30th of last year, the Rams made the trade that sent Jared Goff in draft picks to Detroit in exchange for Matthew Stafford. And 1 year later, to the day, Stafford and the Rams are playing for the Super Bowl. They're all in with the moves that they've made to set up this run. Those pieces are gelling nicely, and at the perfect time, chips are pushed to the middle of the table, and they can cash out as champs. And in the process, Stafford can add the missing piece to his career legacy, which is the Lombardi Trophy. And, Steve, it's an all-SEC quarterback battle, 2 former #1 picks, Stafford and Burrow, and now we'll see if the big game can live up to the last 2 weeks of what has been a great postseason.
That's a tall ask. I'm not sure who had this matchup, but it is all set now. Still, perhaps the biggest story of the weekend may be the one about the guy who could be calling it quits with 7 rings. There's been no official announcement, but reportedly Tom Brady's set to retire after 22 seasons. He led the Bucs to a Super Bowl title at age 43 and then led the league in passing yards and touchdowns this year at 44. If he is done, he retires with a record 7 Super Bowls, 3 MVPs, and all-time records for completions, yards, and touchdowns. But in most sports, the greatest of all time conversation is an actual debate. But just attach the GOAT emoji to the Tom Brady nameplate in Canton, because there's no doubt who the best player all time in the NFL is.
You can take his career and put it into thirds, 7-year stretches, and each of those 3 sections are Hall of Fame worthy. His first 7 years, 3 titles, 2-time Super Bowl MVP. Second stretch, 2 NFL MVP awards, another Super Bowl appearance, and then the final stretch, 4 Super Bowl victories, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, and also the league MVP once. And he'll retire at 44, and we all feel like he was playing some of the best football of his entire career. He just led the league in touchdowns and passing yards. And, Steve, his career aged backwards. While I selfishly don't want to see it end, I'm thankful to be a football fan in the era of Tom Brady, because think of all the legends of pro sports that we never had a chance to watch. We were all able to watch Brady become the football GOAT.
I like fine wine, but even they usually get bad by like the late 30s. He was still going
I'll take
at
your word
44.
for it.
We were truly blessed to lay witness, unless, of course, he was playing.